to be going to northern Virginia.
Right.
And the seacoast here had already been mapped about 10 years prior. And they knew they had arrived at Cape Cod. And they were supposed to be going to northern Virginia on the Hudson.
Oh,
So what we now call New York City is where they were supposed to be going. And when they hit the tip of the Cape, the boat came across about here. He headed south for the Hudson. And along that area of the Cape, we call Race Point. Very fast moving wind. And there's shoals. Goes very shallow, very deep. Very shallow, very deep. And they would throw overboard like a weighted object that would tell them how many fathoms to the bottom.
Okay.
And he could see that it was just extreme variations with a heavy wind. And it is not good sailing area. It's like the most lost ships in America are along the coast here. So the captain wrote in his log, "We're low on victuals, especially beer. So we're going to return to Cape Cod." So he turned the ship around and came and parked in the bay.
Oh, I see.
And on board, we always hear about the religious separatists wanting religious freedom. But also on board, it was about a third ship crew, people that worked on the ship. About a third were the religious separatists that we hear about. And the other third were indentured servants, which we rarely hear little talk of. And they had promised to work for 5 to 7 years for investors who had paid their way over.
Sure.
And their contract read on the Hudson in northern Virginia. They knew they weren't there. So they said, as soon as we hit land, we're out of here and we're walking.
Sure.
Because on the voyage over, the families hadn't treated the indentured servants as equals. They probably were a little rougher guy. They were guys. And, they probably were a little rough around the edges and, leaving England to get over here and willing to take risk. And I know they, according to some of the readings I've done, they had a little harsher language than the families. And, but they were all promised in contract to go there. So they said, as soon as we get off the ship, we're going to walk.
Yeah.
We're out of here. So the families were afraid because when they arrived here, it was huge trees, like 4 and 5 foot trees, and you could hardly fit a person between. It wasn't the sand and stuff. And the scrub trees you see now, it was maples, walnuts, huge heavy-duty trees. And there was no businesses, no churches,
Sure.
Nothing. It was wilderness to them. So the families realized, seeing it was November when they arrived, so it was like this or colder. And they had nothing to live in. So what if all these men took off and didn't help them build homes and stuff?
I see. Okay.
It would not. They probably wouldn't make it through the winter. So they signed the first democratic document in the United States called the Mayflower Compact. And that said, for the common good of all, we will form a democratic, they didn't use the word democratic, they used a civil body politic. And laws will be made for the common good. That's why Massachusetts is not a state, we're a commonwealth.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And so that document, when the question for same-sex marriages came in front of our court system here, they had heard all the arguments, everything you hear on TV and radio. The sky will fall, everything they say, all the awful things that would happen. But the judge said that to deny same-sex couples the right to marry would be to create second-class citizens.
Oh.
And the Mayflower Compact said no one should be a second-class citizen. Everyone should have equal rights. So therefore, they couldn't deny it in this state, because to do so would be to create two classes. So that, it goes way back to the Pilgrims. Isn't that amazing? I think it's amazing.
It is, yes. Well ahead of the time and their rationale.
They wanting freedom, though. Everybody wanting to be treated equally.
Sure, very interesting.
For the common betterment of everyone, that we're all treated equally. So I think it's amazing.
It is.
And that's what